just had that left over. I must admit, Bing, that you took California by storm.
Oh, I don't know about it. When the storm cleared up, though, you bought all the property,
Bing Crosby and Bob Hope appeared to be the ideal Hollywood couple in 1947. However, there was a harsh reality hidden beneath their well-known road film. Crosby refused to go to his roasts, dubbed him a talentless hack, and forbade their wives from interacting with each other. Decades later, the true tale of how two comic icons became rivals and then partners, and the stunning treachery that ultimately caused them to fall apart, emerges. On May 29, 1903, Bob Hope was born Leslie Towns Hope in the London district of Eltham. He tried his hand at hustling pool, selling newspapers, working as a soda jerk, and selling shoes. These positions exposed him to a wide range of individuals. He listened to what made them laugh, how they moved, and how they spoke. They continued the act in interviews and other appearances. "There is nothing I wouldn't do for Bing, and there is nothing he wouldn't do for me," Hope once remarked, "and we live our lives doing nothing for one another." They appeared to be an inseparable pair, since their humor concealed any genuine strain. The public viewed them as two sides of the same coin, constantly entertaining and competing, even though in reality, they were never close. Bob Hope went to his longtime friend Jimmy Stewart's funeral at the age of 94. People saw how weak he appeared. He took the stage during the Primetime Emmy Awards' 50th anniversary a year later. He was joined by Sid Caesar and Milton Berle. Gloria Stewart and Fay Wray, two Hollywood icons, were also present. Hope maintained ties to the world that made him renowned even in his latter years. He was present when the Library of Congress opened the Bob Hope Gallery of American Entertainment in 1999. Two significant exhibitions about his life and career were held at the institution in his honor. He made one of his final public appearances at the Hope Classic golf tournament the following year, when he was 97 years old. He gave Swedish golfer Jesper Parnevik a hug there. His health was deteriorating by that time. He was admitted to the hospital with pneumonia a year later. Hope accomplished a feat that few people ever do, despite his advanced age. He celebrated his 100th birthday on May 29, 2003. The intersection of Vine and Hollywood was christened Bob Hope Square by the city of Los Angeles. Bob Hope Day was proclaimed in 35 states. His sense of humor was acute even then. "I'm so ancient, they've cancelled my blood type," he joked. Hope had never revealed his faith to others. However, he became a Catholic 7 years prior to his passing. He also experienced a strange encounter with death. An Associated Press obituary was accidentally published in 1998, 5 years before he died. Before they knew he was still alive, the US House of Representatives even declared him dead. He spent the majority of his old age in comparatively excellent health, albeit he got feeble in his latter years. Bob Hope died at his home in Toluca Lake, California, early on July 27, 2003. Unbeknownst to him, he was collecting the elements that would eventually form his comedy. He began to take entertainment more seriously during the 1920s. Professionals like King Rastus Brown and Johnny Root taught him dancing, which helped him land menial vaudeville employment. 2 months have passed since his 100th birthday. Later, his grandson revealed that Hope's wife Dolores asked him where he wanted to be buried as he lay dying. "Surprise me," he said simply. His bones were interred at San Fernando Mission Cemetery in a mausoleum vault. They were then relocated to the cemetery's neighbor, the Bob Hope Memorial Garden. Dolores lived for 8 more years before dying at the age of 102. Cartoonists from all across the world honored him after his passing. He was welcomed to paradise by his lifelong buddy Bing Crosby, who passed away in 1977. For a man who had dedicated his life to making people laugh, it was the ideal farewell. Mildred Rosequist was his initial performing partner, but her mother forbade her from traveling, so he partnered with Lloyd Durbin and then George Byron. He first played in tiny venues, such as the Bandbox Theatre in Cleveland. He continued to work, get better, and advance. He made it to the Palace Theatre in New York City, one of the largest vaudeville theatres in the nation, by 1931. Bob used vaudeville as a training ground. In contrast to the majority of comedians of the era, he adopted a more organic style. Instead of only telling prepared jokes, he preferred to engage the audience. He distinguished himself from other performers by fusing dance with snappy one-liners in his presentation. He transitioned from vaudeville to radio during the late 1930s. He made his first radio appearances as host of The Atlantic Family from 1935 to 1936 and The Intimate Review in 1935. Although he gained recognition from these early performances, he became a national celebrity thanks to Bob Hope's appearance on The Pepsodent Show. The Pepsodent Show was an immediate hit when it debuted on NBC. It was the most popular show in America at the beginning of the 1940s. It continued to rank among the top 5 for over a decade. Millions of people tuned in each week to see what Hope would say next. Compared to other comedians of the era, his approach was distinct. Hope made himself the punchline, while most radio performers portrayed fictional characters. He kept his content interesting by making jokes about actual occurrences and daily life. He instructed his writers to read the newspaper and make gags out of the headline. Hope selected only the best of the hundreds of jokes they wrote each week. The late-night talk show monologues that would emerge decades later were modeled after this fast-paced style. His accomplishments were not overlooked. He received 3 Peabody Awards, which are among the greatest accolades in broadcasting. The first was in 1944, acknowledging his wartime efforts to raise morale. William, his father, was a Somerset stonemason. Avis, his mother, was a Welsh light opera singer. Life in England was difficult and money was scarce. His commitment was commended by the Peabody Committee, which stated that it was impossible to quantify the happiness he offered to the soldiers. He went on to win further Peabody Awards for his work in television and radio. The Pepsodent Show was more than just the most well-liked radio program at its height. It was ingrained in American society. It topped the charts from 1942 to 1944, demonstrating that comedy could be more than merely amusement. It might unite people. In difficult times, it might make you feel better. Hope's effect persisted even after radio faded. As a last tribute to a man who had shaped the entertainment industry for decades, he was admitted into the Radio Hall of Fame in 1990. Bob Hope didn't have a spectacular beginning in Hollywood. Going Spanish, a short picture that he subsequently quipped was so awful it should be used as punishment, was his debut film role in 1934. His hallmark humor was witty, self-aware, and always delivered at the ideal moment. Audiences adored him because he didn't take himself too seriously. The major broadcast in 1938 was his big break. This musical comedy wasn't your typical one. The Globe was grateful for the recollection. Hope and Shirley Ross performed the song, which quickly became popular. The tune was memorable, and the lyrics were humorous and heartfelt. It became more than simply a song. It became who he was. It encapsulated his charm, humor, and a hint of sincerity. Everything that people adored about Hope was already well known on radio by the late 1930s, but Hollywood presented a different obstacle. His roles in movies capitalized on his innate sense of humor. He was usually the overconfident, quick-talking man who got himself into problems. The ideal example was The Cat and the Canary, 1939. Hope played an anxious hero alone in a spooky house in this horror-comedy hybrid. Audiences found him captivating due to his ability to strike a balance between humor and suspense. Then came 1940's Road to Singapore. Something legendary was about to begin. It was the first of a series that matched Hope with Dorothy Lamour and Bing Crosby in the film industry. These films have it all. William made the decision to gamble on a brighter future. He emigrated to America in 1907 and landed in Cleveland, Ohio, where his brothers were already employed as steamfitters and plumbers. He dispatched his wife and 6 sons a year later. Adventure, music, and endless humor. Crosby and Hope clicked like clockwork. Lamour was the woman they both pursued. Crosby was the slick talker, and Hope was the sardonic coward. These movies were unique because they felt so natural. The writing lacked a lot of humor. Throughout their continuous improvisation, Hope and Crosby joked with one another and even broke the fourth wall. Their witty repartee gave the films a vitality that viewers adored. Road to Morocco, 1942, became one of the most popular entries in the series, which ran for more than 20 years. It was a straightforward recipe that never became stale. It was clear that Hope and Crosby were enjoying themselves and not just performing. Hope demonstrated his ability to carry a film alone, even outside of the road to series. His talent for parody allowed him to create amusing comedy out of traditional genres. A prime example was The Pale Face, 1948. He portrayed a cowardly dentist who unintentionally rose to fame in the West. It was hilarious because Hope was a gunslinger, even though it was a crazy idea. He played the guy who got into trouble and managed to get out alive, not the tough guy. My Favorite Brunette, a 1947 comedy that parodied detective movies, furthered his love of parody. Hope tries to survive a night at a haunted mansion in the 1940 horror comedy The Ghost Breakers. He wasn't an action star in the conventionals. He talked his way out of difficulty rather than fighting it. He stood out from other prominent men of the era because of that. It all began on May 6, 1941, when Bob Hope embarked on his first USO tour. He gave a live performance of his NBC radio show to a group of servicemen at March Field in California that evening. He had never done it before, and it was a significant event for the newly established USO. Eager to watch a Hollywood icon perform exclusively for them, soldiers crowded the theater. Hope provided them with a blend of humor and music, but more importantly, he made them laugh. His quips were short, incisive, and tailored to their need. He discussed the peculiar world of military posts, their hardships, and their everyday existence. It felt intimate rather than like a well-rehearsed theatrical performance. Hope realized he had discovered his most significant audience when the troops roared with laughter in response. The family reached Ellis Island on March 30, 1908, after traveling in third class on the SS Philadelphia. Bob's age was incorrectly registered by immigration agents as 2 years old rather than 4. For years, that mistake remained on his official record. Everything changed because of that show. Hope performed in bases and camps around the United States during the course of the following year and a half. When World War II broke out, he performed abroad. He traveled through some of the world's most hazardous locations between 1941 and 1945. He gave performances in the Pacific and Europe, frequently close to areas of active conflict. In 2 months, he traveled 30,000 miles during his 1944 tour in the South Pacific. He performed more than 150 gigs while in Australia, New Guinea, and Hawaii. There was hardly any infrastructure in certain areas. The equipment was faulty, and the stages were improvised. He was indifferent. What mattered were the soldiers. Hope's trips were dangerous. Given his significance to American morale, German soldiers kept tabs on his whereabouts. Shortly after his performance, towns were bombarded. The danger did not deter him. Rather, he incorporated it into his performance. He made jokes about a bomb dropping close by. He ridiculed himself for being there if they were rough. For that, soldiers adored him. There was more than just laughter in his performances. Troops were reminded of home by them. To add a unique touch to the performances, he called in singers, musicians, and dancers. Each performance was unique. He adapted his jokes to the audience, the setting, and the circumstance. He was doing more than amusing soldiers. He was getting through to them. Hope developed into more than just a comic over time. He turned into a support figure. He was viewed by the soldiers as one of them, someone who could relate to their situation. His tours around Christmas were particularly significant. Cleveland life was hard. The Hope family, who resided in a modest house close to Doan's Corners, had financial difficulty. In order to get extra money, they frequently took in boarders. He played in frigid temperatures throughout the Korean War, sometimes only a few kilometers from combat zone. Despite domestic criticism, he continued to support the troops in Vietnam, where public opinion on the conflict was mixed. Some of his most significant tours were in Vietnam. He invited celebrities from Hollywood, including Anne Margaret and Raquel Welch, to perform with him. Stages were positioned in various areas to confound adversaries, and the performances were meticulously organized to evade attacks. these performances left a lasting impression on the troops. Many had never attended a live performance before, much less one including domestic celebrities. Hope's commitment remained unwavering. He was 87 when he went to Saudi Arabia in 1990 as part of Operation Desert Shield. Over the course of 57 USO trips spanning several conflicts and continents, he had been entertaining troops for almost 50 years. He was made an honorable veteran by Congress in 1997. More than any honor or trophy, it was the one term he held in high regard. After hosting the first commercial broadcast on Los Angeles' KTLA in 1947, Bob Hope made his television debut on April 9, 1950, with NBC's Star-Spangled Review. His witty monologue, humorous sketches, and musical talents were broadcast on television by this variety show. He had already developed a devoted following on radio, so it was a logical move. His lengthy collaboration with NBC began with the live broadcast from New York. Hope decided to concentrate on TV specials rather than a weekly series. This choice allowed him to continue working on USO tours and movies while maintaining high-caliber production. He stood out due to his early success on television. He committed to a long-term deal with NBC in 1950, guaranteeing his broadcasting for many years to come. Hope's timing and delivery were equally as effective on television as they were on radio, despite the fact that many radio entertainers found the transition difficult. He was among the most well-known figures in entertainment by the early 1950s. He established an enduring tradition with his Christmas specials. During World War II, he began playing for American soldiers, but in 1954 he started recording these shows for television. These episodes showed him entertaining soldiers all over the world, frequently bringing well-known celebrities like Neil Armstrong, Anne Margaret, and Raquel Welch. For soldiers who were stationed far from home, they served as more than just Christmas broadcasts. January 1970 saw the broadcast of one of the most famous. His Vietnam Christmas presentation attracted 64% of the television audience, which at the time was the largest percentage ever for an entertainment special. Hope's visits were more than just amusement for soldiers in the midst of a contentious conflict. Despite everything, Avis never stopped supporting her kids. She helped Bob cultivate his innate talent for entertaining and trained him to sing. He enjoyed making jokes, imitating others, and doing small dancing moves. They brought back memories of home. His final overseas USO tour took place in 1990 during Operation Desert Shield, and he continued to do Christmas specials for decades. His legacy was characterized by his performances as more than just a person who used his gift to cheer up those who serve their country. Variety programs and late-night chat shows would later adopt the formula of Hope's television special. In his introductory monologues, he humorously and quickly discussed current events. He packed every special with comic skits, music, and famous guests. Even when he was on stage with the biggest names in Hollywood, his sense of humor made him personable. He also presented Bob Hope Presents the Chrysler Theater, an anthology series that included variety shows and dramatic plays from 1963 to 1967. This demonstrated his versatility as a producer and performer. He hosted almost 300 television programs between 1950 and 1996, establishing a legacy that influenced entertainment in the United States. Bob Hope, meantime, had a contradictory romantic life. It is still unknown why he married Grace Louise Troxell in the first place. On January 25, 1933, while playing together in vaudeville, they were married in Erie, Pennsylvania. November 1934 marked the end of the marriage. Hope later denied it ever happened, which is what makes this rare. Court documents refuted the publicist's claims that the marriage license was an error. Hope secretly sent Troxell money for the remainder of her life in spite of this rejection. Still receiving financial support from the man who insisted she was never his wife, she passed away in 1976 at the age of 65. When you consider the date of this story, it becomes even more bizarre. Hope started an affair with Dolores Reed in the middle of 1933, even though she was still legally married to Troxell. She had recently joined his vaudeville troupe and was a Ziegfeld performer. Hope subsequently stated that he wed Reed in February 1934, although that was months before Troxell's divorce was officially completed. This poses a significant query. Did Hope fabricate information concerning his second marriage, or was he a bigamist? Hope and Reed's marriage certificate and wedding pictures have never been located. The formal recognition of their marriage has been questioned by biographers such as Richard Zoglin. Reed never seemed to care if it wasn't. She once stated that she wouldn't have stayed if their marriage hadn't been successful. Hope and Reed stayed together for almost 70 years until his death in 2003, regardless of the reality. By adopting Linda, Anthony, Kelly, and Eleonora from an Evanston, Illinois orphanage, the couple created a family. Tracy Shaw, the daughter of well-known New York bar owner Bernard Toots Shaw, was also placed under their legal guardianship. His mother made sure he had the opportunity to develop his skills, even in times of financial hardship. At the age of 10, Bob experienced performing for the first time. He participated in and won a Charlie Chaplin impersonation competition at Cleveland's Luna Park. The family kept a tight public image despite Hope's protracted absences and well-publicized affairs. While Hope established himself as one of the most well-known entertainers in America, Reed concentrated on raising the kids. Hope gave the impression of being a loving spouse and a devout Catholic, but his personal life revealed another. Hope had numerous extramarital affairs with young showgirls and actors. Some didn't last long, others continued for years. These stories were kept under wraps by his charm and influence, but one affair almost brought him to light in a way he was unable to control. Hope got to know Barbara Payton, a Hollywood rising star, in 1949. She was youthful, attractive, and driven. He pursued Hope, despite the fact that she was married. He loaded her with presents and rented her a fancy apartment. They had a covert affair for 6 months, but Payton wanted more. She advocated for more funding and a stronger commitment. Hope, who is notoriously frugal with money, declined. He put an end to it by August. He paid her to keep her silent and turned to go. Their affair was kept a secret for years. Hope went on to other women following his pattern. His crew put a lot of effort into managing his image. Rumors were promptly put to rest, but Payton violated the taboo in 1956. Her career had fallen apart. She was having personal and financial difficulties. She sold her story to Confidential magazine out of desperation. She revealed Hope in the interview in a manner that no one else had. She characterized him as cruel, domineering, and frigid. His innocent persona was shattered when she disclosed information about their romance. Hope remained silent in answer. He was aware that getting involved in the issue would only exacerbate it. His public relations team intervened and controlled the harm. Hope's career continued, and the narrative vanished. Although he enjoyed the thrill of performing on stage, entertainment wasn't his primary goal at the moment. Rather, he developed an interest in boxing. In honor of boxer Packy McFarland, he entered the Ohio Novice Boxing Championships in 1919 using the moniker Packy East. Payton was not as fortunate. There were repercussions for speaking out against a major Hollywood figure. She never got her career back on track. Her addiction and destitution worsened. She was forgotten by the time of her death in 1967. Hope, however, carried on living a double life. The public was never made aware of his long-term affair with actress Marilyn Maxwell, which was a well-kept secret in Hollywood. Rosemary Franklin, the winner of Miss World, and I had another relationship that lasted almost 30 years. During tours, insiders reported seeing young women waiting outside his hotel rooms. Actresses with promise were among them. Others were beauty queens and model. Though he never allowed these affairs to affect his work, Hope relished the spotlight. She accepted his infidelity, even though Reed was aware of it. She acknowledged in a 1978 interview that she didn't think her husband was ever truly blue, but she decided to stay. Perhaps it was her Catholicism, perhaps it was a sensible choice. For whatever reason, she stuck by him. Furthermore, no one else ever replaced her in spite of all the affairs. It was never intended for Bob Hope and Bing Crosby to work together. 5 additional pairs passed over the script when Paramount began casting The Journey to Singapore. Jack Oakey and Fred MacMurray rejected it. Gracie Allen and George Burns also did. There were no further possibilities for the studio. Hope wasn't yet a movie star, but he was a budding comedian, fresh off The Cat and the Canary. Crosby was. Taking a chance, Paramount paired them up. Although they had previously interacted via radio and live performances, Hope and Crosby were not close. The studio wasn't even certain that they would get along. They chose Dorothy Lamour as the female lead just to be cautious. Prior to falling in the finals, he had won 3 battles. He later made a joke about spending more time painting than Picasso. Bob took any work he could find to help support his family. Hope was billed third because Crosby was the major name. In October 1939, filming began, and the 2 actors soon settled into a routine. They started to break the fourth wall, improvise, and add gags. The initial draft did not include about half of the dialogue in the movie. The audience adored it, but Victor Scherzinger, the director, was irritated. The movie was a success. Paramount recognized promise for more, and Hope and Crosby had discovered something that worked. Although they went on to collaborate on 6 more road films, their relationship wasn't as romantic as it appeared on screen. Crosby didn't think much of Hope in private. He repeatedly referred to him as a talentless hack. He was serious. Crosby was quiet and liked to be by himself. Hope, on the other hand, he enjoyed being among people and flourished in social situations. Crosby stayed to himself on set, either sitting by himself or reading the race results, while Hope interacted with the crew. Outside of work, they didn't hang out together, they never socialized, not even with their wives. They differed in other respects as well. Crosby did not attend the Friars Club roast honoring Hope. People observed that he was on the club's board. "I wasn't hungry," he said, in response to the question of why he skipped it. Another problem was money. Crosby made almost twice as much money on the first road movie as Hope did, since he was initially the bigger star. That didn't sit well with Hope. He renegotiated his contract in 1947 and began earning Crosby's salary. However, their rivalry never truly stopped. The rivalry between Bing Crosby and Bob Hope was more than simply for the cameras. Their back and forth was a part of their act, adding to the humor of their movies. Hope turned to the crowd and remarked, "He's going to sing, folks." In the 1952 film Road to Bali, it's time to grab some popcorn.